Good morning, and welcome to the Haven Tree Parent Podcast, where we get a minute to get away from the kids before they wake up and talk about something that's important to hopefully you yourselves and us.
Today's special guest is little Claire. Claire is an 8-week-old Shih Tzu puppy. She is the daughter of the pups that you saw last week, actually. Claire is probably the pup that we are going to be keeping. She's very sweet. Today, she is joining us to talk about how to discipline when you are angry. This is kind of a challenging topic, so we will be sharing our thoughts and opinions on that, and maybe, hopefully, giving you some ideas to help you as you deal with your own emotions and your kids.
All right, so like I said, we're going to talk about anger and how it relates to discipline and, being angry in the moment where you find your kids, wiping their poopy diaper all over the room or some other horrible situation, and you just instantly get that no and freak out mode.
Well, I think so. I would be curious to hear if there are, because maybe we're alone in this. I hope not. But I feel like there's just those things that your kids do that make you feel like a crazy person, right? I know for me, the thing that gets my goat quicker than anything else is our one when she loses her glasses or when she pops a lens out of her glasses and she doesn't seem to know that she did it. She's just totally clueless. I'm like, you can't, you're blind without your glasses. You can't see anything without your glasses. How did you not notice that you couldn't see? What are you doing? And then, she can't find it. And it just makes me a monster. It just makes me so instantly angry that I had to put myself in timeout because I just become an irrational rage monster for a few minutes.
Right. Yeah, I don't know if other people have the same reactions like we do. I'm sure everybody has that thing, but you never know what's going to set you off or something like that.
Josh is no one else is crazy like you're crazy.
About OCD type things, I'm not sure everybody has that. But no, I mean, I think there's other things for myself, if something hits me in the head, I'm instantly done. The environment's now changed, my atmosphere and the mood is over. And, if it's an inanimate object, I will probably punch the thing back that hit me in the head.
I still haven't inspected my broken laundry room cabinet.
I was throwing something away. The cabinet was open. I was getting batteries. I brought my head back up after throwing whatever it was in the garbage, the old batteries in the garbage. And then the cabinet hit me in the back of the head. So I was like, nah! And, lost it.
He came up and said, my head broke the cabinet.
Yeah, when I lifted my head up, it broke the cabinet.
And I said, and by that you mean you hit the cabinet after you hit it in the head.
I hate getting hit.
Hit you in the head.
I hate getting hit in the head.
Yeah, so, which people wouldn't really believe. You seem like a very,
don't touch my head.
Normal, relaxed
I mean, you can mess with my hair, dude. I don't care. But,
yeah. Anyway, so there are things, right? I think we've established that just make you angry. And unfortunately, once you become a parent, that doesn't magically disappear and you suddenly are able to control your temper perfectly, right?
Cool, calm, and quiet at all things.
Right. Yeah. If anything, I feel like my fuse is shorter now because I'm trying to do so many things that there's just less to go around as far as patience and, kindness.
Well, and kids, they're testing and they don't know some things that are going to cause an issue, and you're like, we don't put rice down the drain because Daddy just spent 3 days trying to declog the whole thing. Yeah. So let's not put the rice bowl right into the sink, because then I'll have to be putting the snakes down there again, and that's not a fun thing for me. But not that I've seen that happen. I'm just making it as example of something awful you don't want to find happening. So
we have in fact had that very experience, as you might guess.
So we had a few points here that we wanted to talk about as just how to deal with that reaction, whatever it might be in your case, for when that event happens or something is upsetting to you and you want to react. But what we just wanted to say a word of caution of don't just jump right in, going to the full extreme of like correction. I mean, the kids probably know what's going to, cause issue, and like, mom and my dad is mad today. Stay back, go do whatever, play in the room. But, we wanted to just say first, just to like, be slow to that anger and like quiet yourself, and just find a silent place to go, reflect on what just happened, and think about your emotional response to it and how you want to approach your kid with it, versus just going right into the situation, which is what we see in society as like normal reaction, is like people just freak out and break down. And like I said, if it's not an instance where you're getting hit in the head, then you can probably find a way to do that. For myself, once I get hit in the head, there's no like finding a quiet place. It's instant, like, Rah! So I need that. But like I said, that's not usually the kids hitting me in the head. So when we wrestle and they'll like pull my arm too much, then I'll be like, okay, I'm gonna take a break. But I don't yell at them for wrestling too well. Like, that just means they're getting strong. So
yeah. Well, and I think too, it sort of comes back to like even what I said earlier, as far as like, I need to take a time out really quick. I think, and and that's a skill that we're trying to teach our kids as well. Like, it's okay to be angry. Like, there are things in life that will make you angry. Like, that is part of life. That's part of, feeling emotions. There are things that make you angry. What's important is being in control of your actions during that anger. And so, if you need to take a minute to take a breath, and realize this isn't something that's a big deal, then do that. I think that that's important, for your kids. So, but I think it's also, very much a practiced response, like, because we are sort of told, by society and culture, like with cancel culture and things like that, that it's our right to be angry about different things. And so, to sort of practice something different and realize that it's okay to not get angry about every little thing, I think is also a really valuable tool. Look at this. I don't know if you can see her in the camera or not. She is like
see the corner,
digging around and being a little psycho over here. I don't know what she's doing. Silly
she
thing.
smells mom and dad from last week.
Probably so. She's like digging in the corners of the bed for treats or something.
Mama left milk in here.
Silly thing. You're definitely old enough to be weaned, you little brat. That's what her mom thinks too. Every time she just stands there and looks at you like, please save me from these hooligans.
Yeah.
Aw. She's cute though.
So yeah, like we're saying, just find that place to regroup yourself and come back at the issue with more informed or more realistic approach than just like, you're getting a spank, you're going, or you're whatever your punishments are, you're going into timeout, you're going here.
Yeah.
And however that it needs to be handled appropriately and not fly off the wall sort of reactions.
Yeah, I would say to that point very quickly, we both grew up in homes where spankings happened. Like, that was, part of, I think, the 80s and 90s, that spanks were just part of normal life. But I would say if that is a tool that you implement, number one, I would suggest it's very important to know what the laws in your state are. And that comes obviously from my background, my professional background. I think it's important to be aware of what the potential risk or ramification is for that. And so like in the state of Ohio, using any type of like spank and stick or belt or something like that would potentially be cause for a report to Children's Services, whereas in general, a swat on the bottom with your hand would not necessarily. However, a slap in the face could. So I think it just is something to be aware of. If that's a tool that you implement, I think it's important that you do your research on that. If that's something that you choose to do in your house, because certainly the law has something to say about that. And then the other really important thing that I would say with that is, if you are angry and you are spanking or swatting your child in any way, I would seriously reconsider that, because even if you're not using a spanking stick or something else, if you're, using any sort of physical punishment while you're angry, I think that the lines between discipline and abuse are blurred also.
Right, but and hopefully there's plenty of other tools that you can utilize
Exactly.
for, correction and discipline. So definitely, look into some of those, and maybe we can mention some here in a little bit. But
Sorry, I had to put my little professional asterisk on the, you used the spank word, and I had to kind of clarify, because,
I know.
Obviously my experience professionally with that has been, I've seen a lot of different things. So, and heard a lot of different things. And, so I just think it's important to clarify.
Yeah.
So-
No, I mean, like I said, it's on that line of like the gray zone for sure.
Yeah.
So,
But I think, as you said, there's lots of other tools that you can use, and especially, as we're talking about disciplining while angry, if you're someone that has a hard time dealing with not responding in anger to things, certainly I would be encouraging you to probably look at some other tools, unless you can get that frustration under control.
right. Yeah. I mean, usually, a good stern talking to, like we send them up mom and dad's room, and like we'll go sit and talk with them and just say, we love you, but the situation that you got, called out in for having to come up here is not a good one. So
It's probably a topic that's a whole other conversation for another day too, right? We could probably write that down and come back to that at some point in the future.
yeah, that's fine. So the other point here was just rehearse your reaction and sort of like have like a game plan for like when the kids disobey or lie or steal or all the other little things that you would be upset by, making a mess in a room that they shouldn't be in, or breaking something that's important to everybody or to them. And just have your already like planned reactions for that. So that way and this is always the hard part on myself, because like she was always like, let's have a planned reaction. And I'm like, well, how do I do that? Because I'm more of a in the moment kind of person. So, I see like, no, you're hurting the puppy. Like, let's not do that. And, let's go have a timeout because you did whatever. But but then I'm not consistent because I don't have that planned reaction locked in my own self, because it's not things that happen all the time. It's like once or twice a week, this one will happen, and then it'll happen 10 days later. And so it's harder for me to be like, what did we do last time? Oh yeah, it was a timeout, or it was take this toy away, or, whatever XYZ other tools, like we're saying. You have to go hold your sister's hand or give her a hug, and they hate doing that. Like I always try to put Saya and Nature together. I'm like, hold hands, and they give each other a hug and say, we are family. And I don't know. That's just the little thing that I started doing. I was like, just give each other a hug and say, we are family. We have to play well together. And, not that they say the end part, but it's just something, to make them think like we have to be nice to each other. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and that it's an easy tool, I think, to just be to have a plan. Which as you said, I like to have a plan. That's kind of my nature. But if you have a consistent way that you react to things, of like, oh, you didn't do this, that means you have to, like, so one of our kids is notorious for not putting their stuff away. I'll say, like, take shoes upstairs. And they'll like take them halfway up and leave them on the stairs, or they'll like take them up and put them in the hallway. Like, it's like 7 more steps to your room. Like, come on. And that's something that, like, when you're tired, when it's been a long day, when you're just fed up and done, that can be the kind of thing as a parent that really pushes your button. I hope, like, maybe we're just like outing ourselves as rage monsters. I don't think that's true. I feel like, like that's a normal thing that parents get irritated by. But, then for that, like, it's like, okay, you have to come back up again and put your shoes away, and then you get to help me with whatever I'm working on for like the next 10 minutes. Like, so now I have an extra set of hands. So rather than it being, it still is a consequence for them, but it sort of like ebbs that irritation to be like, well, you chose not to obey, do what I asked. Mm-hmm. And so now you have to help me. Shucks,
right.
So you run stuff up and down the stairs for me while I'm cleaning up here.
Right.
Or, whatever.
Yeah.
And so just having those planned sort of reactions just kind of makes it just a more natural flow. And so rather than like feel that irritation, it's like, well, you chose knowingly that you were going to have this consequence. So,
Right.
sorry,
Or
I
always
don't know what
try,
to tell you, sis.
or always trying to create a punishment and like in the moment,
Yeah.
like come up with something new. Like I gotta, correct them somehow, and I'm gonna make them do this instead. Stand on one foot for 5 minutes. Like
No, that's I don't think that's appropriate.
no,
but-
I've never done that, but I was just sort of like, some people get caught in that. Like I need to do something. What do I do?
Right, right.
And
Well,
don't have that plan.
Yeah, and kids are always doing like crazy things that you've not thought of, like what appropriate punishment is to that. And I think,
Yeah.
with that, refer back to number one of taking a breath and reflecting before responding.
Right. Come back with a good response.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm going to move us on to the next point,
Yeah.
which is just speak firm and be stern about, your response. And like, definitely like, this is the reason why you got in trouble. You lied. You took something from your sister and hid it. You did XYZ, and we don't think that that's good behavior, or that's not appropriate. Which I think we use the word being appropriate a lot around here. Like put on appropriate clothing, say the appropriate things, don't talk back type of stuff.
Yeah.
Which there's a whole mix of having three girls of everybody wants to
Yeah,
get their piece and say why they did whatever. But mom and dad's word is still finite at the end of the day. So it's having that stern response and not be too, I don't know, like myself, I'm probably not as stern as I should be, because I would probably be more forgiving or than the situation requires, because I'm like, they're a kid, they don't know what's going on, but they need to know like it's not good to continue to do that. So you definitely have to be like, we don't really want to hurt our sister when they're wrestling. If they say stop, you need to stop. We have a lot of rough housing a little bit, so people get pillow fights and all that fun
you
stuff.
just have like a nice like happy voice. I think that that's part of it too. And so it's either like the kids think you're playing or they know you're furious and they scatter. Like there's no sort of in between for you. But I think that some of that just has to do with like your natural like tone and the way you talk. And that's something that we've had conversation about a lot. Like you need to practice like how to respond and adjust that tone so that the kids understand that it's time to take you seriously. Because it's like I recognize it. I hear like I'll be, cleaning in the kitchen or like prepping food in the kitchen, and I'll hear sort of that shift of like, okay, like it's time to stop wrestling and clean up. And I'm like, there, and so I just silently laugh because I'm, a jerk. And, and then the kids keep wrestling because you sound like you're being silly still. And it's like, they don't recognize sort of that subtle change in like, all right, we've had a good time playing. Now it's time to shift.
Yeah.
And
like
then that
5 minutes of me playing Rough House is not what they want. They want to play Rough House until they have to go to bed or something.
Yeah, until they go to college.
Yeah. Kenzie just wants to climb all over. Like last night, she was like, "Do this, do that." So I give her a few minutes of like throw her onto the pillows kind of thing, and then she's like.
So
Just
if you're
wants to
like
keep going,
Josh,
so.
you probably need to practice your stern voice or your serious voice. I think moms maybe have that easier in general. I don't know. I think that might be a stereotype. But, like there's something you said for like the very quiet, like, do we need to go to the bathroom and take a break and have a conversation? That like typically scares kids. Like that very quiet whisper.
They're like, oh,
angry mom is like way more intimidating than anything else. And that's something like even Adri has said, like, I would rather just be in trouble than have you yell at me. Like, and for her, it's very true. Like, she's, yelling isn't really, doesn't have the same effect as just being serious and saying like, we're done. I'm serious. This is this. So yeah, I think that, just recognizing that does have power if you let it have power. But some of us, that may again be kind of a learned skill.
Right. And like I was sort of saying, like I'm more I don't know, try to be more gentle in my approach to like correction and firmness. But I mean, yeah, you definitely want to make sure that you are stern about it. And then also you want to make sure that you're loving in that situation as well. So you want to make sure that you're giving them a hug and just sort of saying like, I'm sorry you made a bad choice and had to be stopped from, XYZ event.
Punching your sister in the head.
Yeah, we don't want to, cause more problems and injury. But we definitely want to let you know, like, we are loving parents, and, we had to put you in timeout, or, send you to your room, or get you out of the situation from making the bad choice, because it's not the appropriate choice that you've made. So you definitely want to make sure that you just say, like, well, I'm sorry you made a bad choice. We love you. But we don't want you to do that again. We don't want you to get in trouble anymore for that thing specifically. So please don't do that. Or we will have to go to, making it a 10-minute timeout, or, you won't get this toy until tomorrow, or, stuff like that.
Yeah. And I think, we are very affectionate with our kids, and some, especially like with discipline and consequences, need that a lot more. I think of like Sai that day he got in trouble for getting out of bed or something. And Sai and Josh are have a very special little daddy and son relationship. And so when Josh doles out discipline to Josiah, it's very, I don't know, like he acts like he's ashamed and, like heartbroken, even though it's no different than sort of the discipline or the consequence that you would give to anyone else. It just is like Josiah's reaction to that is a little bit different with Josh.
Yeah.
And so, there was one day that I went in, and he's like this kid that like he's not necessarily very affectionate in general, but when he's upset, he really just needs to sort of be hugged or loved on, sort of until he can like release that tension, and you can just kind of see it almost in him. And so I just went in, and he was in bed, and I just kind of like put my hand on his head, and I was talking to the other kids. It wasn't like, I had some big long conversation with him, but I just kind of like rubbed his temple and just stood. And then all of a sudden, I was probably like in there for 5 minutes, and then he kind of like relaxed and rolled over and sort of like snuggled into my hand. And then we were able to kind of have a conversation, but that's really what he needs. Whereas like Adri wants to just be like, okay, consequence. I'm sorry. I know I did the wrong thing. Love you. See you later. And like, she wants to like have a minute to herself to sort of regroup and reset and have a good rest of the day. And so we have to kind of be respectful of that too, and not talk her to death after whatever the discipline or consequence is. So there's sort of a balance there.
Right. Yeah, I remember that event, but I can't remember what he was upset about or what I was telling
I
him.
can't remember
So
exactly.
Usually they just try to keep going out of their room at bedtime, and
Yeah.
I was like, just stay in your bed. Please stop getting up. And there's X, Y, Z reason why I have to go downstairs and do this thing right now. Like, I don't know what you guys need to do. You just need to be going to bed.
Yeah.
Please stop coming out of your room. So yeah, that makes it challenging. So I don't know. I know he was frustrated, but I don't remember
I know. I can't recall what
was
happened.
going on. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So I think the last thing probably, and we've kind of alluded to this a little bit throughout, but I think that the last thing really is that it's important to be consistent with these things. And this kind of goes along with having a plan. It goes along with, knowing your kids and the way that you respond. But I think, as we both kind of suggested, being consistent in that is really important. And again, it's a really simple way to kind of dial back in your emotional, angry, frustrated, whatever response, and just being able to respond sort of in a way that's practiced, rehearsed, planned, agreed upon by both parents, and also is something that the kids expect. You don't want to have kids that are fearful of how mom and dad are going to react. And I think that that's something that is hopefully universally true. Like, parents don't want their kids to be afraid of them, and kids shouldn't be afraid of their parents. Like, that is not that's not an appropriate loving relationship.
Right.
Certainly children should have a healthy respect for their parents. But that's very different than being afraid of how mom and dad are going to react. And so being consistent and having sort of a planned, consistent response, and having both parents on the same page as far as how we respond to different things, different actions. And that takes time and that takes practice, you know, and as we've said, like, kids are going to surprise you. They're going to do things that you never expected them to do, that are going to push your buttons, right? Like that's just part of this parenting thing. But even having a plan in that of like, you know, hey, Adri did this weird thing today and I sent her to timeout and then I made her clean up. Like, what are your thoughts on this for next time? You know, like, well, you can't give her two consequences. Like, it needs to be one or the other, or, you know, whatever. And then, you know, in those instances, going back to your kid and saying like, hey, I'm sorry that I overreacted in this instance. You know, this is sort of what the consequence for this will be in the future. But I wanted to apologize. And I think that there's nothing wrong with saying like, I overreacted and I'm sorry. From now on, this is what the consequence is going to be. Because as parents, as much as we try not to let our kids see it, we're still human and we're still fallible too. And so I think, you know, or asking for forgiveness when you lose your cool, you know, unfortunately that's something I've had to do, particularly with Adri a few times, because we are both strong-willed ladies sometimes. And so we get...
There's a lot of strong-wills around here. So.
We sort of butt heads, or like she'll get an attitude with me and like sort of my instinctual reaction is like, don't you take that tone with me, you know, or like, and that's not necessarily what I say, but
right.
You know, that sort of is like the rage monster, like bubbling up of like, whatever, you know? And so we kind of will like get into like these little snitty things with each other, like, you know?
Right.
And so that's something that I have to go back and say like, and that's about, you know, being the adult, you know, like we have to be the adult and say like, hey, your behavior wasn't acceptable, but I also didn't respond in the right way. And I'm sorry for that. This is going to be what the consequence is from now on.
Right. And one thing I was just thinking about, that's not one of our points, so this might get cut out, but whatever, is just sort of thinking about like hanging out when we were able to hang out with our small group friends and their kids and around the same ages and stuff. There's been several instances where like the kids have been playing or doing whatever with their friends, and correcting my kids in that situation, and it's always a hard call because it's like you don't want to correct your friends' kids, but at some level of parenting you just become oblivious to like all children are now yours, and like you will just correct whatever bad appropriate behavior. And I think I like called out 2 or 3 different times like, you know, stop, somebody's gonna fall, and just sort of like with, you know, that firmness side of things in that one moment that I had it, and the other kids that weren't my own were just like, you sound like you're in charge, or, you know, like we've never heard that sort of like response to this activity or something before. So like, just be aware, like your family's reactions to things are going to always be different. Like the way you treat your kids is different than how your friends are going to treat them. But even when you're hanging out with other kids and stuff, you still need to be a parent around that situation and not let your kids go entirely off the wall. I mean, it's fun to let them just explore the backyard and go crazy, or the park or wherever you end up. But there's definitely been moments where like you're just helping other parents by correcting a situation that we don't feel is safe, but you're what, and then it's, like I said, it's just interesting to see other kids' reactions to that sort of like parenting or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
So not that other parents aren't doing a good job parenting, I'm sure, but
I think at least for our friends,
it just shows that there's variety. Yeah.
And I think, you know, our expectations for our kids are very different. I think, you know, we've gotten feedback that in some ways we're very much more permissive, and then in other ways we're very much more strict. So, you know, and I think probably all families are like that, where there are things that are no-goes, are not acceptable, and then there are things that, you know, are acceptable. So, and that just depends on the family. But I think that we probably got to wrap this up, even though, as we've both kind of alluded to, we could probably talk all day about
this. Is probably part 1.
Yeah, part 1 of, you know, 37.
We could probably do this for every age. Okay, when they're 10, when they're 11, when they're 14.
But the kids are going to be waking up soon.
Yes.
So I do believe that is all the time that we have for today. We would love to hear your thoughts, particularly when it comes to number one. If you would please share with us what it is that makes you feel crazy, irritated, or angry with your kids.
So we know we're not the only ones.
So that we know that we're not totally crazy. We would love to hear that from you. Or if you have other ideas or tips or thoughts as far as how you deal with that anger that we didn't talk about, we would love to hear that as well.
Until the next adventure. Bye.
Bye.